Welcome
Okay.
to the Virtual Business Owners Network on Friday, the 22nd of September. Our guest presenter today is Teresa Lewis from the Mauve Group, and her presentation will be on Employer of Record Explained. Take it away, Teresa.
Okay. So I'm going to have a chat with you today about employer of record as an alternative to perhaps setting up a company in another country. So, according to the World Trade Organization, small, medium-sized enterprises represent over 90% of the business population. In the 5 biggest countries in Europe, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, SMEs make up for an average of 35% of all EU exports. And 1/3 of surveyed SMEs generate over 20% of revenue internationally. And that figure is expected to rise to 47% by next year. So that's almost half of their revenue coming from overseas. So in reality, SMEs are the lifeblood of the global economy, and these statistics tell us that SMEs have a huge and powerful presence in the economy with a high success rate and promising revenue potential from their global expansion. So why is it then, when we think of international expansion or we think of multinational companies, we only think of mega corporations like Apple, Google, Amazon, and so on? What could be stopping SMEs then from taking the leap to grow their business internationally and get in on the action of operating overseas? So we know the landscape in recent years has changed. We can see how innovations in technology, as well as globalization, have played significant roles in the introduction of hybrid and remote work models in the world of business. And obviously the pandemic accelerated this change. Employees are reevaluating what's important to them. And in fact, 14% of the global workforce is considering quitting their jobs in search of it. So today we see companies that are refusing to adapt to this new work model are struggling with labour shortages, whilst companies that do adapt to the model, they're not only filling these labour gaps, but they have a bigger talent pool now of skilled workers to recruit from. But hiring internationally can be daunting. And we can see here on the slide some of the key challenges that businesses face. So, smaller companies are thinking, well, how do I stay compliant if I'm going to employ staff internationally? And what if I need to relocate staff? How am I going to navigate the immigration process? And even paying staff globally with all the currency conversions and the fees and so on. And obviously, when it comes to entity setup, language barriers, cultural differences. So we know that SMEs sometimes have a lack of knowledge in all of these areas. They also have a lack of connections. They don't have access to international lawyers or compliancy experts, accountants. And they could also well have a lack of resources, money and time and staff dedicated to needing to dedicate their time to an international project. But as I said, there's an alternative to actually setting up an entity. So we'll look at the employer of record solution. And that's, it allows the provider, this is the solution, what happens, it allows the provider like ourselves, Mauve Group, who already has a global presence through its own entities or partner networks, to employ workers on your company's behalf in countries where you are lacking a registered company. So the provider then is responsible for making sure the employer has it's a tri-party relationship. So your company, your workers, and the provider that you're choosing get into a relationship, and the employer of record ensures that the worker is on a contract abiding by the laws and rules in that country, and that they're paying the correct social security and taxes there, and they are then getting paid in the local currency correctly. And that's the payroll is taken care of. So it just leaves then the client, or yourself in that case, more time to take on the day-to-day management of the staff. And so we see that there's many benefits to this employer of record. Not only does it mean then that you have this sort of in-country presence through the provider, it's also going to save time. So if you compared that to what it would take to set up an entity, it's going to get workers on the ground far quicker. And especially if you have like an urgent international project that you wanted to do. So it gets around all that kind of entity setup and bureaucracy that goes with that. And we estimate on average about 1 month turnaround for this solution. So that's from an inquiry stage to getting the worker on the payroll and signing and sorting out all of contracts. So another benefit is that it's going to save you money in comparison to what it would cost you to set up an entity in order just to have perhaps workers working for you in another country. So when we look at entity costs, what they entail would be initial setup costs, ongoing management, perhaps closure fees, payroll and taxation, foreign exchange, and more often than not, perhaps immigration fees if you're relocating staff. So using an EOR in a new country makes a project more financially viable as you save on the majority of these costs then relating to entity setup. And then there's the reduction of risks. So business owners fear, when they think about setting up or operating internationally, they fear that they're not going to be compliant with employment laws in that given country, or that there's the risk of triggering a permanent establishment or misclassifying workers. So I think one of the most important factors to consider is that of compliancy, and an EOR solution will safeguard your global staff and help you stay on the right side of local legislation. So if you hire through an employer of record, then your staff in country are employed in line with all these local laws. And in light of recent news within our industry, it's more important than ever to shop around for your provider, because some large corporations at the moment have come under fire for non-compliancy. So it's the case of cheaper isn't always better, as we know. So let's talk a little bit about that misclassification of workers. When you employ people internationally, you typically employ them in one of two ways, either as a permanent employee or as an independent contractor. And how you classify your workers depends on a variety of factors. But if you misclassify someone as a contractor who should be an employee, your company could face some serious fines and penalties. And we all know about the case of Uber, where the Supreme Court awarded its drivers certain rights that they didn't have before because they were misclassified, including paid time off and minimum wage. So the employer of records experts will ensure that labour laws, including payroll and tax and social security, onboarding and probation and leave entitlements and any termination periods, all of that is adhered to and taken care of. So benefits, that's another area that can be a minefield for business owners who want to employ staff globally. So local employment regulations will deem what statutory benefits the worker will be entitled to. So for example, in a country like Austria, they operate a 13th and 14th salary. So when you're working out the remuneration package that you want to offer a candidate, it's important to take that into consideration. Are you going to include that in their gross salary, or will you then be paying that out on top? And some locations may require mandatory enrolments to government health or retirement schemes. So it's good practice to research what these statutory benefits are for the country that you consider operating in. And many providers will have all this information on the website, so they'll have certain resources that you could look into. And then, of course, you might want to offer things to your workers that are discretionary or benefits on top of what's statutory. And an in-house contracts team within that EOR provider will help guide you through any additional benefits, such as travel insurance or medical and retirement plan and life insurance. And so let's talk about the ongoing support that you then get with an EOR solution. So our own global expansion has provided us with first-hand knowledge on the challenges of employing overseas. So using a provider like ourselves means that you're supported by a leading network of experts in fields such as accountancy, legal and compliance. And that's that local support that you might lack then as a small, medium enterprise. But be aware that some EOR providers are predominantly platform-based. So, when you have a query then and you need to speak to a human, it's hard then to be able to get through to someone with your query. So it's good to sort of shop around to make sure that you are going to get a dedicated account manager. And I know that in Mauve, we also have a great worker liaison team, which guarantees your workers then are sufficiently supported when working in an overseas location. So what happens then when your trusted member of staff suddenly decides they want to relocate to Australia? So the EOR service can incorporate a global and visa immigration solution as long as your worker meets the required criteria. So expert advice can advise you on the type of visa to best suit the needs of your worker. And then when you delegate the groundwork to dedicated experts, they're going to wait in line for you. They'll liaise with government officials, and they'll submit an application on your behalf. So it means you can boost your chances of approval then, and it's going to save you time, and you can focus your energy then and resources on your core business. And so to sum it up then, the process of operating in another country obviously can be daunting, but with the right expert support, it can be a game changer for your business. An employer of record service can be the ideal choice for companies who, of any size, require rapid entry into a new country. This solution ensures that you retain the day-to-day management of your employees while the employer of record handles all the necessary local employment and HR tasks. So it brings peace of mind of compliance then and cooperation in every aspect of your staff's employment. So do you have any questions around this then?
Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you very much for that. And we will take questions now. Appreciate it. And while we're doing the questions, I'll put in a note of who attended today. There, Vincent, you have your hand up.
I have a question, Teresa. Hello again. The perfect presentation. There are a few of us on here today who are working in different countries who will pay probably more attention than anybody else, really. And my question is that I get bombarded on a regular basis with questions because I'm also the administrator for all the Irish in Italy. And even there, as you were talking, the questions were coming in through the WhatsApp group. I can't, not for companies, but for private individuals looking for status, looking for to get onto the employment ladder and looking for their documents, looking for their residencies and stuff like that. This would be not employers, but this would be regular people. There are hundreds of them. I'm wondering if I could just send them all to you guys. Is that something that we could do?
So this is workers, yeah? This is workers looking for information then on how to be
do.
compliant to do things.
Yeah. I could read out as you were speaking because they all come to me because I'm the admin for this one because I've been here for so long. But there are some every region in it. If you know Italy, I know you know Italy actually a little bit.
Yeah.
There every region has its own kind of nuances and it's very difficult for me to give information about, I need to get this contract, I need to get my residencia, I need to get my my partita IVA, I need to get my all of these other partita IVA is VAT, and you have to have one if you're working as a self-employed, but it's difficult because you need to have one thing before you can have a second thing, but that person will tell you to go back to that office and get that one first. I'm looking at every day we get 5 or 6 of these questions, which is what I can see. It's not in your in your portfolio adesso. And now, sorry, I'm almost speaking Italian there.
Slipping into a bit of Italian then.
But I can see that the Mauve Group working also with many of these. Now, maybe the numbers don't stack up, which is why you guys don't look into this, or maybe you do. And today you only spoke about corporates.
Yeah, we have like HR consultant, like we have a whole host of services. EOR is just one of them. We've got a visa and immigration department. We run risk assessments for companies who don't know if perhaps they're non-compliant country. We have salary benchmarking. I think what you're talking about is they want specific help around bureaucratic. Who do I go?
Yeah, it's bureaucracy, legal bureaucracy.
To be honest, we probably wouldn't have the resources to deal with those specific things. We would probably get in touch with our kind of in-country partners about things like that. So I don't know whether we could get tied down on individual workers' requests for that. I mean, we would run HR services, and there's a whole different kind of categories within that. But I mean, we could have a chat offline about it. And
yeah, that'd be a good idea. Can I suggest the two of you have a one-to-one? I'm just conscious of the time here.
Cool.
You have a one-to-one, and maybe you might be able to get something. Listen, Teresa, thanks very much for that. I appreciate that. We can put that up on our system, and we'll do that for those who weren't able to attend here. I'll just stop the recording now. Thank you very much, and appreciate